Hey there, and welcome back to another weekly Canadian real estate news recap here on Bald Prairie Real Estate. My name is Matthew Pfeifer. I'm a real estate agent in Regina, and that is my trusted assistant, Matilda. You saw it in the title. You've probably seen it all over the news. Lots of people doing videos on this, that 20 to 30% of Canadian homes are owned by investors, and collectively, everybody seemed rather shocked and rather upset by this. Now, we'll be talking about that in just a second here. First of all, this should not be shocking. And second of all, the title of investor is rather misleading in this report. So we'll get into that in just a minute here. But of course, I'm going to start off with another terrible joke. This one comes from my mother-in-law. Why do seagulls always fly over the sea? Because if they flew over the bay, they'd be bagels. If you have a terrible joke that I can use in a future episode, put in the comments below. Let's get into the news. First off, let's take a sip from this cool cup that I got from my buddy Kyle, who lives out in Chilliwack. He's a real estate agent out there, and he's got an awesome social media profile where he does cool things like hides $50 in an envelope and then gives you clues if you follow him so you can find that $50. So check out his social media and see if you can find some money next month. Let's start off talking about London, Ontario's stats. A lot of you have asked me to put it in the Canadian real estate monthly market update to do, and I would love to do that. It's just actually really difficult to get the historical data that I want to use to do those 5-year comparisons and then get the data timely enough to be able to put it in those monthly updates. So if you're a real estate agent in London and you have all that information, I'd love to chat with you about maybe putting that in future videos. But talking about the January stats, they had 350 homes that were sold in the month. That is the worst January they've had since, I believe it was 2009. Really ugly start, but it was up about 50 sales from where they were in December. Now, if you are thinking about buying a house, whether it's in London or anywhere else in Canada, I know great real estate agents across the country that I would love to get you set up with, that I know are going to take care of you and make sure you find a great house and get a good deal. There's going to be a link in the description of this video where you can book me in for an appointment. I will call you, figure out exactly what you need, what you're looking for in an agent, and get you set up with that right agent. Next topic here is a report done by Zolo, and it is the most affordable cities in BC. Now, not cheapest house prices, most affordable. So they're comparing average household income to the average house price. I actually did a really similar video to this, I think it was like 2 years ago, on the entire Canadian real estate market, looking at different cities across Canada. If you want me to maybe update that video, let me know in the comments below. So we're looking here, most affordable cities in order. Prince George, home prices there average about $360,000. Fort St. John, about $540,000 is the average price. And Terrace, BC at $460,000 were the three most affordable cities across the entire province. Now, of the more medium-sized cities, the three most affordable cities were Kamloops, $757,000 is the average price there. Nanaimo, $880,000 is the average price. And Abbotsford at $1.2 million. Boy, $1.2 million doesn't sound affordable when you're coming from Saskatchewan and house prices are around $300,000, but those are the most affordable cities in BC. Now let's talk about the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklin, interest rates, household debt, all of it in one simple little article here. This is from BNN, and it's Tiff Macklin saying how one of the things that they are concerned about with continuing to raise interest rates is that it's going to impact high household debts in Canada. Now remember, this is the same Tiff Macklin that about 1.5 years ago said, don't worry Canadians, take on as much debt as you possibly can because we're going to keep interest rates low for a very, very long time. And then of course, 1.5 years later, interest rates see the fastest pace of increases we've seen in decades. And now Canadians are going, hey, I took on all this debt like you told me to do so, and I'm struggling to pay off that debt. Not really a good look there, Tiff, but of course that should matter. Household debt in Canada is extremely high, and a huge portion of that is the cost of housing in Canada, with mortgages being a huge component of household debt. And with interest rates rising, that's putting a lot of stress on Canadians. Now, this article might be the most thank you Captain Obvious article I have ever talked about on these weekly news recaps.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
And that is that they need more purpose-built rentals in Toronto. Color me absolutely shocked. And of course, there's lots of people that are still saying, don't worry, we have more than enough houses in Canada. We don't have a shortage. Well, the numbers disagree. Now, I got to read this off my notes because the two organizations that got this study done, there's a mouthful here. So it's the Building Industry and Land Development Association in conjunction with the Federation of Rental Housing Providers in Ontario. Now, I know I can see it, people typing in the comments, of course, those that represent the builders and those greedy landlords, they want to see more purpose-built rentals because that helps both of them. Hold up for 1 second here. Let's talk self-interest. If we built too many rentals, well, we'd stop building rentals and there would be no more work for those that are building rentals. Not really great for an organization to argue for a surplus. And of course, if we had a surplus of rental properties, that would drive rent prices down. Not really good for an association that represents landlords. Now, what I pulled out of here, which was really interesting, is that almost 90% of Toronto's rental stock was built between 1960 and 1980. There was like something about 250,000 rental properties that were built in that time frame. In the last 20 years, we've only had 23,000 rentals built in Toronto. Of course, population has increased significantly in the last 20 years compared to 1960 to 1980. So what they're asking for is get rid of the red tape, get rid of as many taxes that are put on developers. Let's get homes built in Toronto because we simply don't have enough purpose-built rentals. And that is, of course, leading to some of the sky-high rents that we see in Toronto right now. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of the title here. That is 20 to 30% of Canadian residential properties are owned by investors. And of course, everybody seemed to have lost their mind and said, look at those greedy landlords. That's the problem with the Canadian real estate market, is those greedy investors and landlords. Well, hold up here one second. I'm going to read the definition of an investor right from the article here. An investor is defined as an owner who owns at least one residential property that is not used as their primary place of residence. That means they're classifying anybody who has a cottage or a secondary property to house an elderly family member or a university-age student. Those are all investors. Now, I'm not sure about you guys, but I wouldn't consider somebody having a cottage as an investor. And in fact, in Vancouver and Toronto, in the study, they talk about this, that 42% of those that were considered investors say that they have a secondary property to house a family member. Now let's talk about another elephant in the room, and that is that 1/3 of Canadians live in a rental property. So who would own a rental property? Well, an investor or a landlord. Who else would own one? So again, 20 to 30% of residential properties owned by investors. That should not be shocking given the fact that 1/3 of Canadians rent. Now, what I'm not trying to say is that there aren't investors that speculate and drive up prices. I'm not trying to say that at all. That is a problem in the Canadian housing market. But what I am saying, though, is that 1/3 of residential properties being owned by those that are investors, well, again, who else would own them? And of course, the definition here of what is an investor is, I would say, rather misleading. Speaking of 30% of Canadian residential properties being owned by investors, only 30% of you watching this video are likely subscribed. So why don't you help me out? Hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And then watch this video next. That's what YouTube algorithm says you need to watch next on Bald Prairie Real Estate. Give this video a like if you found it entertaining and leave a comment below. I love chatting with you guys in the comment section. As always, thanks very much for watching.